After Apple Picking by Robert Frost. My long, two-pointed ladder's sticking through a tree towards heaven still. And there's a barrel that I didn't fill beside it, and there may be 2 or 3 apples I didn't pick upon some bough. But I am done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night. The scent of apples I'm drowsing off. I cannot shake the shimmer from my sight I got from looking through a pane of glass I skimmed this morning from the water trough and held it against the world of hoary grass. It melted, and I let it fall and break, but I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell, and I could tell what form my dreaming was about to take. Magnified apples appear and reappear. Stem end and blossom end, and every fleek of russet showing clear. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of a ladder round. And I keep hearing from the cellar bin that rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. For I have had too much of apple picking. I am overtired of the great harvest I myself desired. There were 10,000 fruit to touch, cherish in hand, lift down, and not let fall. For all that struck the earth, no matter if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap as of no worth. One can see what will trouble this sleep of mine, whatever sleep is. Were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, as I describe its coming on, or just some human sleep.
We used the Ciardi method to analyze this poem. When reading through this poem, we noticed an immense amount of figurative language throughout it that helped not only complicate the language, but also helped convey the meaning and purpose of the poem better. Some of the main forms were imagery, repetition, consonants, and metaphors. An example of imagery would be magnified apples appear and reappear, stem end and blossom end, and every fleck of russet showing clear. And an example of repetition would be, this sleep of mine, whatever sleep it is, which later follows with, long sleep as I describe its coming on or just some human sleep. He uses the word sleep multiple times. An example of consonants would be, but I was well upon my way to sleep before I fell, and I could tell. And finally, an example of a metaphor would be the entire idea of sleep actually meaning death. Frost utilizes rhyming to better unify his thoughts and to easily create stanzas so that the reader can understand the poem better. The first question of Ciardi states, what does this poem say? We do not know who the actual speaker is, however, we do know that it is a first-person perspective. The narrator is speaking to a general audience of anyone who regrets a choice that they did or did not make. The speaker is someone who is heavily devoted to their work, but also deeply troubled by it and the endless burden. On the surface, they work on an orchard and are overwhelmed by how many apples are in the season's harvest. They had felt dreamy/drowsy since when they looked through a sheet of ice lifted from the water, indicating that winter is coming. They are tired and feel a sleep coming on. However, wonder if it is a typical sleep or something even deeper. The meaning beyond the actual literal situation is much deeper than just sleep. Apples are the speaker's work/projects, and the harvest is their inspiration. But it is impossible to actually follow through with that amount of ideas. Unable to resolve his dilemma, he falls into a slumber that represents death and failure or regret regarding his accomplishments or lack thereof. The next question is, how does this poem say? Frost creates images of ladders up against trees, sheets of ice coming off of the water's surface, an overflowing or overwhelming amount of apples to harvest, falling into a deep slumber, and much more. These images demonstrate the beginning of winter and the end of picking season, a tired and overworked farmer, and a sense of regret in giving up. They extend the substance of the poem to help the reader understand the speaker's internal conflict. Frost uses repetition, personification, sensory imagery, and more to help convey his images. The general mood of the poem is defeat, yearning, acceptance, and more. The poem symbolizes many things not directly stated. There is so much biblical symbolism. The two pointed ladders symbolizes Jacob's ladder between earth and heaven. The actual apple symbolizes fruit from the forbidden tree or the Garden of Eden. The ice melted that fell and broke symbolizes the biblical fall of Adam and Eve after committing their sin. The bruised and spiked with stubble apples symbolize sin. The poem also implies that the winter and his sleep represent death. The barrel that he didn't fill symbolizes the shortcomings of his life's accomplishments or what he dreamed of or intended to accomplish. The poem form is one long stanza. The poem rhymes, but has no preordained rhyme scheme. Finally, what does this poem say to me? This poem relates personally to myself and the general public, because everyone has felt defeated and felt like they did not accomplish everything that they could have. I have felt this way before and have experienced these emotions. They are quite common. This poem reminds me of when I feel like a perfectionist, when I set my expectations too high for myself and then don't reach them.